What is up, everybody? You are listening to the All Pro Nation podcast live on the All Pro Nation radio network. First podcast we've been able to say that. I've got my Facebook spammer in chief with me, Tanner Weber. Tanner, how you doing, man?
Doing well, buddy. How about you?
You're not spamming too many people on Facebook this week?
No. No, I'm not.
Okay, good.
I tried to lay off that this week.
Good deal. And then we have a special guest with us tonight. His name is Zach Goodell. Zach, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me on. And for clarification with everyone, just before we get into this, no, I'm not related to the commissioner. Okay. Thank the Lord.
I was about to say, man, we were going to have problems if you were. We're not fans of the commissioner here at All Pro Nation.
Oh, I get the question a lot. I was sick enough of him for what he does in his office already, but now, like, if anyone mentions him to me in relation to my name, I'm probably gonna hit that person.
Yeah, I understand.
Right,
it's gotten to a point.
I understand that. Zach, why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners of All Pro Nation where they can find you on the internet, the Twitterverse, and where they can hear your podcast.
All right, you can find me at Locked On Jaguars. We are on iTunes, Spotify, and Megaphone.fm. Megaphone and Spotify, obviously better for those non-iPhone nerds out there. But you can find me on Twitter at Zach_Goodall. All of my written work is at LockedOnJaguars.com. We're over with the Locked On Podcast Network. It's a really, really great network of a lot of good guys running a lot of different shows. We've got the entire NBA, the entire NFL, I think minus one team. I can't remember exactly what it is. And I think we're starting to get into the MLB as well. So definitely a lot of content for you guys to check out over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So y'all go, y'all be sure to go follow Zach, go check his stuff out on Locked On Jaguars. And we'd appreciate that. He's taking the time to be with us. So y'all go support him. All right, so I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is going to be installment number 3 of the State of the NFL. And today we are starting with we're going to do the NFC and the AFC South. Don't forget, you can go to allpronation.com and you can download last week's episode where we did the NFC and the AFC East with Victor Logothetis. And then 2 weeks ago we did the AFC and the NFC North with Brian Roach over at Steel City Underground. So y'all go download those episodes, and we are going to go ahead and get started. So I guess we're going to start with the NFC South, and I guess first this will be a first in All Pro Nation podcast history where I'm going to hand over the controls to my co-host Tanner, since I will be answering his questions on the NFC South. So go for it, Tanner.
All right, man. You get to rant this week.
I do. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, we're going to start off bottom to top, obviously, like we've been doing. And at the bottom of the NFC South, we're starting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just kind of reflect on their season. What else do they need to do this offseason to get better? I think they have quite a few pieces, it looks like, that they need to add this offseason to compete in that division.
Yeah, so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think if you asked just about maybe 7 out of 10 people at the beginning of the season last year, they would have said the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were probably one of the favorites in the NFC South. They seem to have had all the right pieces together, right?
I don't mean to interrupt, but I may or may not have put my money on. I may or may not have put my money on Winston to win the MVP when his odds were looking really nice.
Ooh, that's bold.
Yeah,
I put like 5 down and could have won like 80 back, so it was worth it. But the only thing is, I might have put like 20 down. So
I actually
go
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I actually in my preseason projections had Tampa Bay winning the NFC South and being the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. So that's kind of how much on the Tampa Bay bandwagon I was.
I'm actually kind of like the complete opposite of you guys. Going into last season, I actually projected, I don't like to brag about this, but I actually projected Tampa Bay to finish last in that division, and I actually had them only at like 4 or 5 wins. I'm not a big fan of Jameis Winston, and I mean Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson. That was a good duo, but I mean their defense doesn't really scare anybody. They got some quick linebackers, but they're not very athletic in the secondary. They're really young, and I just think they got some growing pains yet that they're going to suffer through before they're good again.
Yeah, so I mean, with all that said, obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't live up to expectations, going 5-11. Obviously, the road was a big issue for them. They only won one game on the road this year, I mean, you're not going to be competitive if you can't win on the road, and so that was a big thing. Their lack of pass rush, though, I think was the most surprising thing. They came in dead last in the NFL in sacks, and just never really seemed to be able to put a whole lot of pressure on quarterbacks. And then their secondary was hit or miss. Vernon Hargreaves kind of regressed a little bit, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree.
And at best, I think at best right now he's going to be a nickel corner. And so with Brent Grimes being 35 and a free agent, you would think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to have to go corner in the first round of the draft, especially considering Julio Jones and Mike Thomas are in their division. And then of course every quarterback in the NFC South that they're going to have to face, Cam Newton, Drew Brees, and Matt Ryan, can definitely throw the ball, and so I think that's going to be
definitely.
Yeah, go ahead.
They're going to have to go defense, I think, first. I mean, like you said, their pass rush really struggled all year. I think Gerald McCoy had a hard time staying healthy. If they don't go corner in the first round, I could also see them go safety with a guy like Derwin James from Florida State.
Yeah.
Justin Evans I think he's going to be a good player, but I mean, they need somebody across from him. And then obviously Brent Grimes is a free agent. I don't see him coming back, and they could use a pass rusher.
Yeah.
They're also in the market for a running back now. Doug Martin's gone.
Yeah.
And Joe Hawley, their center, is also not going to be back. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. It sounds like they could re-sign him, but so they also could be in the market for a center too. This is a good deep draft for centers, so that's another spot. But I think they have a lot of holes to fill. I don't see them competing again next year.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with that. Yeah, I kind of view like if I still have no idea how to pronounce his name. I'm not looking at the running backs as much, but like I obviously know who he is. LSU running back Geis.
Yeah, Darius Geis. Yeah.
Good. I pronounced it correctly.
There you go.
If he has a good combine, and I've seen some mixed reviews on whether or not he will or he won't, people making different projections. I feel like he could creep his way towards 7 with them releasing Doug Martin. And I feel like if you're confident in that taking Jameis Winston to the next level to make up for his poor, also injury-ridden, but regardless, poor 2017 season, take some stress off of him. With the other weapons you have, it's almost like you can't let that go to waste. So try and optimize that offense as much as you can. At the same time, if they're going running back at 7, I think throughout the rest of the draft, you can only really look at either offensive line or defense, like you said, because that offensive line is also a really, really poor unit. I don't know what the standing cap space, but potential maybe suitors for Andrew Norwell or someone like that, because they've got a lot to fix, like you said, if they want any shot at competing anytime soon.
Yeah, and I mean, and then you look
it's not an ideal division to be in.
Yeah, and you look at their pass rush. So you have Robert Ayers, who turns 33 this year, right? You have Noah Spence, who's now gone through 2 shoulder surgeries since he was drafted. You have William Golston, who had a terrible year, didn't even get a sack this year. And so you look at these 3 quote unquote pass rushers, and you can see why they only had 22 sacks on the year. And then you look at the draft, and it's not a very good draft for pass rush. You got Bradley Chubb out of NC State, but he's not going to be there at number 7. And after that, it's a pretty big drop off, talent wise. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think as far as defensive end goes, they're going to have to address that in free agency. And they are going to have to. I just think corner has to be a first round draft pick for them.
I think the pool of corners is relatively solid.
Mhm.
The thing is, I don't know who screams going top 10 other than Minka, but you have to also wonder if Minka's even going to be a boundary corner. That's where I like him.
Right.
And I haven't done a ton of work on him, but I like him out there. I know people are projecting him all over. But if Minka's there, I say absolutely go get that right now. I obviously don't think he will be. Otherwise, I feel like there's a lot of talent in the class and that it's deep, but it starts to fall off in terms of first round.
Right.
In which case, there might be a couple guys that go in the later first. I don't know about anyone else you'd take at 7, but there should be a good pool of guys if they want to keep playing Hargreaves outside, trying that experiment. They could go for his teammate in round 3 in Duke Dawson, because that's where I've seen him projected a lot. Well, former teammate for that matter.
Yeah.
But they do have options if guys like Minka or Bradley Chubb fall to 7. I say you take that over Geis any day of the week.
Chubb
with
is
the
there, you
depth
definitely
of this
take
running
him.
back. Yeah. You have to. And I think that all depends on how the quarterbacks start to fall, because they're that first pick out of that like quarterback-y range from 1 to 6.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The good news is I'm looking right here on over the cap. They do have about $70 million to work with in cap space.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have some money they could spend. And you look at free agent corners like Jermaine Johnson or Malcolm Butler, who
Mm-hmm.
could be a nice fit on the outside for them. So they could address both defensive end and corner in free agency, and then just play their best available on the board when it comes to the draft.
Yep.
So, and I think the biggest thing, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I can't be the only one that was surprised that Dirk Cutter maintained a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I remember looking back at when they fired Lovie Smith because they wanted to promote Dirk Cutter because, if they didn't promote him, somebody was going to take him, and they had to go all in on Dirk Cutter. And this is kind of what he's produced for him, a 5-11 team. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that if he doesn't turn around, this has got to be his last year as a head coach in Tampa.
Yeah, he's gonna have to get at least 8 or 9 wins or close to the playoffs, I think, for him to maintain his job.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree.
And then I think other than that, I mean, I would like to see a little maturity out of Jameis Winston going into this next year. I would like to see.
No more sucking your fingers and
Yeah, God, that was terrible.
sucking W's.
But I think I think if all in all, like Tampa Bay, they're not going to be competitive this year. They're probably not going to be competitive the year after that. But they're not. I don't. At the same time, I don't think they're far away either because they have a good couple young pieces they can put together.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting
Yeah,
to
they
see where they go from here.
Yeah, I agree. But we're gonna keep moving along. We're gonna head into the Atlanta Falcons now. Yeah, the top 3 teams in the NFC South all made the playoffs: Saints, Panthers, Falcons, and they're at the bottom of that in the 6th seed. So, Chris, did they underperform or overperform? Kind of what you projected in 2017.
Honestly, they overperformed because I thought and it was to an extent, but I thought the loss of Kyle Shanahan was going to be just detrimental to the team. And that's not to say that Sarkisian was a solid replacement, but he definitely ended up finding his way as far as an NFL play caller toward the end of the season. But so they definitely overperformed. I definitely expected the Super Bowl hangover, if you will, and them to kind of regress. Matt Ryan, I mean, he just played out of his mind in 2016, and I mean,
Kyle Shanahan effect.
Yeah. I mean, he was definitely deserving of the MVP. I mean, he played stellar. But I've been watching Matt Ryan for a couple years now since he came into the league, and I can tell you that wasn't sustainable. And so I definitely expected a regression, and there was a slight regression, but I definitely expected more than they gave me for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of have them pegged in that spot. I would say that they probably overperformed a little bit. I actually had them finishing second in the NFC South behind the Panthers behind the Saints. I'm sorry, I had the Panthers finishing third. But when you look at this team, all the way across their roster, I mean, they still look like they're built to compete going into every single season. I mean, you got to argue they still have one of the best offensive lines in the league when they stay healthy. And
but
I mean, Matt
Ryan,
Ryan,
when they're healthy,
right, and Matt Ryan, I mean, you can call him a tier 2 quarterback, but I mean, he's still serviceable enough to get you wins or 10 wins a season, I think. But it's just tough to do in that division. And you got playmakers on the outside with Sanu and Jones. And, I mean, they probably have the fastest defense in the league, actually. They got some really fast linebackers, and their safeties are very physical, too. So I think they're going to compete again next season. What do you think they kind of need to – where do you think they need to address this or in their team to get better next year?
I think one of the main things they need,
because they don't have a lot of holes.
No, they don't. I think one hole that they do have is a real fast, speedy, deep threat to go alongside Julio Jones and
Taylor Gabriel.
And I don't think I just don't know if Taylor Gabriel is going to be a part of their plans much longer. I really don't. I don't know if Taylor Gabriel.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to bring him back.
I really don't. And so I don't. So one name to be on the lookout for would be wide receiver out of LSU, DJ Shark. I think he kind of fits what Taylor Gabriel brings to the team. I think they could probably get him in the second, maybe third round. I guess that really just depends on his combine and pro days and whatnot. But I don't think he's going to be a high second round pick. And so I would definitely think that they need to go there. And then I wouldn't be surprised if you see them take a alignment on either line. Dan Quinn is known for in his press conferences talking about the game. You know, we've heard the cliche quote unquote being one in the trenches and having good quality depth. And so I've seen a couple of mocks where they take Isaiah Wynn out of Georgia at the guard.
Yeah.
And so I think that really makes sense. And the one other thing that position I would look for is just depth at safety and linebacker.
Right.
I think that we can all.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, man.
I think one other position that you didn't mention that I wanted to throw in there was tight end. I mean, Austin Hooper's serviceable, but I feel like they could upgrade there. Yeah. Is it Levine Toilolo? How do you say his name?
Yeah, Toilolo.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I know he's a valid cut candidate, so they could replace him too. Zach, are there any draft picks? I know I myself actually my last mock I had as Isaiah Wynn replacing Wes Schweitzer at right guard. Is there anybody that you think that they might pick up?
I think Wynn's an ideal fit there, getting an athletic guard like him. I know teams like, and I know we're going to talk about Jacksonville later on, don't really value guys like Wynn because of their size, just from buzz I've heard. I feel like that doesn't really matter as much in Atlanta. They've shown that they will take chances on smaller guys, more athletic guys, really no matter where. I think Deion Jones is one of those guys. There's someone on their defense. I can't remember who
Deion
it is.
Jones.
Right.
He's super fast.
I think it's Deion. Yeah, he's super fast.
He's like 225 pounds.
Yeah, I don't see them really stereotyping on size as much, in which case I think a guy like him could fit. He's obviously, and I know this isn't going to the thought of it as much, but he's very obviously a local guy. He'd help them in pass protection a lot. This tight end class is it's hard for me to say deep because it's not top heavy at all and like leading back into being deep. Whereas I think there's like a really good crop in a small specified area, like the second to third, maybe fourth round.
Yep.
But that could be the ultimate spot for them to continue to upgrade their offense. If they think that their defense is growing enough, as it always seems to kind of start slow and come on throughout the year with them, if they want to just continue to build that offense, maybe a vertical guy to match the vertical ability of Julio Jones, like a Mike Gesicki, maybe upgrade at blocking tight end where you could get a guy like Hayden Hurst who would fit that role really well out of South Carolina. I think going on those, offensive line, tight end kind of, I think if they make picks there, early value picks, that could actually really help their offense, which, as we were talking about earlier, their replacement for Kyle Shanahan and Steve Sarkisian wasn't by all means the greatest whatsoever. That's what a lot of Atlanta fans were starting to complain about.
Yeah.
Right. I think we all kind of agree that they need to add another playmaker, somebody that can stretch the field and in the trenches. I mean, they could add another lineman. Alex Mack isn't getting any younger either. I mean, maybe start looking for a replacement for him. Maybe not necessarily high in the draft, but later in the later rounds, because I do think this is a very deep interior class. One thing I want to hit on before we move on to the Panthers, I do want to talk about their defense a little bit. At the end of the season, the Falcons did announce that Vic Beasley is going to be moving back to DN because he did play linebacker this year, and he severely regressed, in my opinion. Well, that's a good idea, Chris?
You just got to look at what Vic Beasley did in his first season. I mean, dude's sack to pressure ratio was out of this world, and it just wasn't sustainable. So, I mean, he was destined to regress. Obviously, I think he regressed a lot more than we expected. I think moving him back to the outside would be wise. The 1-2 punch of him and Tack McKinley is good. And I'm trying to think. I'm blanking on his name because he's not a big time player. But who else filled in at defensive end a little bit this year? Had the monster game against Dallas.
Adrian Claiborne.
Claiborne, yes.
Yeah, that's
he's a free agent, I think. Though.
Yeah, yes. I think they definitely need to make a point of bringing him back. That is, I mean, for your backup to get, I think he had 6 or 7 sacks on the year. He had like 6 sacks in that game. Yeah, that's true.
Against the Cowboys, he had like 6 sacks.
So I mean, I think they've got to figure out a way to bring him back. And so I like the Atlanta defense, but I will say this: I feel like Kyle Shanahan kind of laid out the blueprint when he beat the Jaguars in this season. The Jaguars run that same defense, that Seattle type defense, right? And I feel like offensive coordinators around the league are starting to really figure that defense out, and really be able to put pressure on it. And so I start to wonder if Dan Quinn's defensive calling is going to have to alter, or if his defense is going to start to regress as people start really trying to expose his defense in multiple ways.
Right.
So.
Yeah, just it's worth noting too that the Falcons are actually 28th in the league in cap space. So if they do want to bring like a big name player in somewhere, they are going to have to part ways with a few guys.
Yeah. One thing that I would look out for, and I think they've come out and said that it's not going to happen, but I think they'd be crazy not to. I would be on the lookout for a trade of Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, I have seen that float around a little bit.
They're not going to,
especially at the combine this week too.
Yeah,
I'm sure people.
They're not going to be able to afford him and Freeman at the same time. They're both going to get big money, and so I think that given the season that he just had, and he's put together a couple of really good seasons as the number 2. I think now is the time for them to cash in and maybe get something for him because they're not gonna make him the starter over Devontae Freeman. And
Right.
so he's gonna want starter money when it's time for him to get paid again. And so I think now would be a good time to cash in on what he's done. So I'd kind of look out for that.
Right. He deserves it too.
Yeah.
So, moving into the Carolina Panthers, who finished second in the NFC South behind the Saints. Chris, let's look at their 2017 season. Do you think they overperformed or underperformed?
I think they overperformed, honestly. Carolina is one of those teams that you never really know week in and week out which team you're going to get because you never know week in or week out which Cam Newton you're going to get. He's got to be. I mean, look, Cam Newton is a great athlete. He's not an elite quarterback, but he's a more than an elite athlete, and he makes things happen sometimes when things just shouldn't happen. And but then he comes out sometimes and defenses get a little pressure on him and he folds and the Panthers get their ass kicked. And so they're really up and down. So really to say if they overperformed or underperformed is really hard to judge. But I think in general I think they exceeded my expectations in making the playoffs. They've got to go after a number one wide receiver. Looking at their
100%.
Looking at their salary cap situation, and they've only got about $24 million in cap space. Trading Kelvin Benjamin to Buffalo. Devin Funchess just he's a quality number two. He's not a number one. Wide out. Curtis Samuel, he's not a number one. Bird is not a number one. He's a good deep threat, and so they've got to go dynamic wide receiver, and they've got a couple. Calvin Ridley out of Alabama would be a good pick. Christian Kirk out of Texas A&M. And so they've got some wide receivers for them to pick from. And then the other thing is their defense is getting really old. Julius Peppers at 38.
They've already addressed that a little bit.
Yeah, Mario Addison at 30. Charles Johnson, they've already released him.
Thomas Davis, Mike Adams.
Davis. I mean, yeah, they're old, man. They're old, so they've got to do something. They've got to start drafting and getting young in the defense for sure.
Yeah, how about you, Zach? You think Panthers overperformed or underperformed in 2017?
I think they overperformed a little bit because I think what they're doing on offense is just they just need to not do it. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. And Mike Shula not being there.
Just not. I don't know what the idea was. What trying to keep the same offense that they're trying to run in having this power, not as vertical game. When bringing in North Turner and what they did, how Rivera is saying he wants to keep the same offense and like try and get down to that. That's not Cam Newton's forte. That's not the guy you selected at 8 overall, Christian McCaffrey's forte. It might be your forte when you have no help in the receiver game, like you guys said. So I do think if I were in whoever, I forgot what they did at. I know they kept the same assistant or interim GM. I just can't remember his name. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't have allowed. I would have strongly vetoed going after North Turner. What I would have done is I would have tried to work with Rivera to more and more of a zone concept scheme, run a lot of zone option. I feel like that's a lot more beneficial to having a Cam Newton and a Christian McCaffrey there. And Absolutely. Then I would gut the passing game. Even though you have a reliable yet injured for most of last year guy in Greg Olsen, you might keep him, but I would just totally redo the passing game and go after these vertical threats that maybe Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk, like you guys said. could be a good fit there. You
Yeah.
have the zone scheme with the vertical passing concepts, and you might be able to utilize the guys that you've drafted and tried to build around a lot better. And I think offensive line could also be addressed as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got to start getting ready for life without Greg Olsen. I mean, he's Cam Newton's security blanket for sure. But you saw
Mhm.
how it was when he was out for a good chunk of the season. I mean, Ed Dixon he wasn't the same. I mean, he had a couple good games, but he just wasn't the same reliable tight end that you have in Greg Olsen. And I don't know if he could really be the guy moving forward. So I think they really need to address tight end as well, because Greg Olson's not going to play forever.
Right. I got to do my short little rant here on the Panthers. Obviously, it's still really early in the offseason, but looking at this team right now, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they're the team in the NFC that takes a huge step back next year and everybody, I mean, like they only win like 4 or 5 games. Just because, I mean, their offensive line, like you guys said, it's not looking good right now. Andrew Norwell is a free agent. Doesn't look like he's going to be back. Matt Khalil is a turd. Ryan Khalil, I mean, this is his last year. He's old. Greg Olson's old. They don't have a ton of playmakers. Jonathan Stewart might get cut because they need money. So, I mean, they're going to have somebody else go along with Christian McCaffrey. I personally think he's more of a wide receiver or a slot wideout than a running back. And then moving over to their defense, we already talked about how old they are. They cut Charles Johnson, try to get younger. Thomas Davis, this is his last year. Mike Adams is old. So, I mean, I feel like they have a lot of holes, and they don't look like a team that should be picking in the late 20s.
Yeah.
So
and then
they have a lot of upgrading they're going
to
to need to do this year.
you got to factor in Luke Kuechly. You know he's going to get at least one concussion throughout the year. So,
Yeah,
and
right.
he's going to miss time. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of concussions, but I mean it happens every year, and so so I mean,
Especially at the linebacker position, a lot of contact.
yeah, and he just plays so hard, man. Like, I don't know if there's a more passionate person about football in the NFL than Luke Kuechly. And I mean, and you can kind of see it in the way he plays. And I mean, he keeps racking up these concussions and these injuries. I mean, his career is going to be over quick. So that's something they need to consider too.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they're going to go in the draft. I think they could go a number of different ways, but I guess if I had to throw something on the table right now, I'd say they're probably going to get a playmaker. Christian Kirk, like you said, is a good piece for them to add. I don't think Calvin Ridley's going to be on the board when they pick, so maybe even Cortland Sutton from SMU. He's a really big guy that could go across from Devin Funchess if they want to replace Calvin Benjamin again.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's our rant on the Panthers. We're going to let Chris have the floor here. I know he's really excited to talk about it. And
they overperformed.
The Who Dat Saints 2017 season, overperform or underperform, Chris?
Oh my God, they overperformed.
No bias.
Look, no. How can you be biased? They went 7-9 3 goddamn years in a row, and then finally had a winning season and won the division. That is freaking overperforming. They definitely overperformed. I don't know if I've ever seen on any of the other 31 teams as far back as I can remember. I don't know if I've ever seen a draft class this dynamic. I mean, you had the offensive and the defensive rookie of the year, and Alvin Kamara, Marshawn Lattimore. You had Ryan Ramczyk, who took every offensive snap. You had Hendrickson in the 3rd round, who when Alex Okafor went down was a big piece and was even a rotational guy when Okafor was there. You had Al-Qadim Muhammad, who looks to be like he's going to be a really good defensive end going forward. I mean, this draft class was just stacked with talent, and it was a different Saints team than we've seen. You know, we're accustomed to the Drew Brees airing it out, offensive strategy. And they definitely
400 yards a game.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be if Drew Brees didn't throw 375 to 400 and a couple touchdowns, the Saints probably lost the game. So it's very refreshing to see Drew Brees have multiple games with only 200 or so yards. Um, but the Saints were still racking up 400 and 500 yards of total offense because the running game, the 1-2 punch of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, was. I mean, they had to be. They were definitely top 5 in running back duos. Could probably argue top 3. So
no, they're number 1.
Probably over number 1.
really,
They're definitely number
okay.
1.
Well, see,
I'd say
I was trying not to
Last
show my
season,
fan
maybe.
bias.
You were trying to eliminate the bias, but like, dude,
Yeah.
please. I would have killed for a 1-2 punch like that in Jacksonville, and I am a big believer in Fournette, but I would have loved to have a better 1-2 punch than Leo and TJ Yeldon.
Yeah.
Chris Ivory.
Yeah. So I mean, Chris Ivory. God, I remember. We were stuck with the Chris Ivory disease for a little while here in New Orleans. But so yes, I mean they definitely overperformed. The defense still isn't where it needs to be. I mean it's come a long way. Marshawn Lattimore was one of only 2 cornerbacks to not allow a touchdown this year. The other one being Jalen Ramsey. So I mean, just to even put Lattimore in the conversation with AJ Boye, Jalen Ramsey, who else? Tremaine Johnson,
Casey Hayward.
Casey
Road's
Hayward.
closed.
To put him in
Road's
that
closed.
category as a rookie is just phenomenal.
Oh yeah, big time.
So I kind of like Crawley on the other side. I wouldn't be mad if they decided to upgrade it, but I don't know if they need to. That secondary has so much chemistry, and Crawley is no slouch. He's definitely come a long ways, especially considering he's an undrafted rookie or free agent signing 2 years ago. Then let's see, and then of course, Marcus Williams. I even forgot about. God, how could I forget about him? That's Minnesota fans' favorite Saints player. But I mean, you look at Marcus Williams. He had a solid year. I mean, barely
Top 10.
Yeah, definitely. And just one bad play, I hope doesn't define his career. I hope he's able to shake back from that. But dude, I mean, he just balled out. So looking at their offseason needs, I think their glaring need, and it's been their glaring need for the last however decade, is a defensive end.
I thought you were gonna say D tackle.
No. Defensive end. They've got to get more pressure on quarterbacks. Cameron Jordan is a beast, and he finally got his recognition this year. But what Saints fans, I think, take for granted is the fact that Cam Jordan never misses a snap. And, he was drafted in 2014? No. 2012.
No, it was before that.
2012. Yeah. And he's never missed a game due to an injury, ever. So, I mean, I'm not wishing bad luck on the guy. He's one of my favorite players. But I mean, injuries are gonna happen eventually as he gets older. I mean, he plays every defensive snap, and he's one of those players next to Drew Brees that if you lose, I mean, it's oh shit, the season's over, type of mentality. So they definitely need to get somebody. Like I said earlier, outside of Chubb, defensive end kind of takes a deep dive. I would look at like maybe Sam Hubbard out of Ohio State as a potential draft prospect.
Harold Landry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Landry.
Harold Landry out of Boston College.
Landry, maybe Key later on. If he falls into the second, you could get him at the second round pick.
I would love if we could get Arden Key, but I don't know if he's going to make it out the first round.
I think it'll be late one, early two, maybe.
I've heard a mix of things. Obviously,
Yeah,
people are scared off by the dropped off. Yeah, we've still got a lot of time. I think his combine will be huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he does have a few off the field issues that are going to be a red flag to some teams, but I think all in all, I think he kind of got a lot of that cleaned up this last year at LSU. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they need to get a. You don't know what's going to happen to Alex Okafor. Alex Okafor was solid, but I mean, he's 29, and he tore his Achilles. And he came to New Orleans on a 1 year kind of prove it deal because after his stellar rookie season in Arizona, he's kind of battled injuries his whole career. He was well worth the money New Orleans paid for him, but do you bring the guy back from an Achilles injury, that has a history of injury problems? They definitely need to probably look at defensive end. Defensive tackle is interesting. Sheldon Rankings, I don't know if he's lived up to the hype of being a number 12 pick. He
I don't like the position they're playing him in.
He has flashes, but I think anything in top 15 is just a premium pick. And so for where he was picked, I mean, I don't know if he is given the production to justify being picked at number 12. But he's solid. I would like to see them get a big, chunky, just 300 something pound nose tackle for the run defense. I mean, they're missing that. Nick Fairley was a big loss to them,
Yeah,
and he'll probably
it's unfortunate.
They've officially released him because they had to for salary cap purposes. So that just sucks. And then another sneaky position that I don't know if a lot of people are thinking about is tight end is a really big need. Colby Fleener, Saints fans like to sit there and say, "Oh, well, Colby Fleener is getting paid this ridiculous contract and not living up to it." But I mean, if you look at tight end contracts, I mean, he's right in the mix. He's not even in the top 5 paid tight end. So I mean, I don't buy that he's overpaid. I think they got market value for what was supposed to be a pretty good tight end, and he's kind of had an up and down career. Josh Hill is a tight end who you can count on in the playoffs, and that's pretty much it. Hooman is a tight end that's really excels in blocking. He could probably be a surprise cut in the offseason. And of course, they have John Phillips, who is one of those kind of players that on the team, off the team, on the team, off the team. So I would really like for him to go after. Help me if I mispronounce his name. Dallas Goddard.
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 Yeah.
Out of South Dakota State. So I didn't really see much of him in college, but I was watching a lot of tape on him here recently because he's a name that I've seen kind of floated around, and I really like what I'm seeing from him.
Right.
So
yeah, he's a big name up here. I'm from South Dakota, so everybody knows who Dallas Goddard is. He is a freak athletically. He was actually scouted to play basketball, and it's funny because the South Dakota State coach, Goddard told him he wanted to play football at SDSU, and he goes, your work ethic just isn't there, son. I mean, you can try walking on and try to make a spot, and here he is. He's going to be arguably a first-round pick 4 years later.
Yeah.
But he's a freak in the weight room, and I think the Saints would be really lucky to have a guy like Goddard. If they utilize him the same way that like a team like the Eagles uses like Zach Ertz, he can stretch all 3 levels of the field as a tight end, and that's a really dangerous offense when you got Michael Thomas, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, Ted Ginn, and throw in Goddard. I mean that's the best offense in the league in my opinion. So
yeah.
I would love to see Goddard in New Orleans.
Yeah. And then one other position is I'd really like to see him get a real athletic linebacker. AJ Klein he's okay, Craig Robertson was never supposed to be a starter. He was really brought in for his special teams ability. Same with Nate Stupar. And Alex Anzalone, I forgot to mention him earlier when we were talking about the draft. He had a stellar start of the season, but then he got hurt, and injuries have kind of been his forte throughout college too. So I mean,
Yep.
so I would really like to see a real fast, athletic linebacker because they have no speed. They have no speed in that second level.
Yeah,
And
they're
so
bullheads.
yeah, so and I think that was kind of their Achilles heel this year was the just slow linebackers. Um, so
Getting to the perimeter on plays. Yeah.
yeah, so I would really like to see that. Maybe a Rashawn Evans out of Alabama would be a good fit. And then, of course, Kenny Vaccaro is 90% not going to be back. At this point, I would be completely shocked if Vaccaro is back.
Yeah,
And
it doesn't
so,
sound like he's going to be.
so which is fine because he doesn't really fit Dennis Allen's scheme. He's not a true strong safety. He's really good as a slot corner, but he can't really, he gets exposed when he goes up against some of these real athletic tight ends, like we saw with Gronkowski and Kyle Rudolph and whatnot. So I don't think the Saints are going to miss him much. They do probably need to address that nickel corner position if he's gone. Of course, they were in the runnings last year for Malcolm Butler and Tremaine Johnson. Malcolm Butler was, they had agreed on a $50 million deal, but the Patriots blocked it. Tremaine Johnson was interested in coming. He just wasn't interested in the long-term deal. Of course, the Saints were going 7-9 for consecutive years, so he didn't really, he didn't know if he was to buy in. Now his tunes might have changed. So I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. They have a lot more holes than I think people are giving them credit for. But at the same time, they're still a competitive team, and I think they'll still win the South again next year.
Right. That actually leads me into my next question. We're kind of here to wrap up the NFC South. In my opinion, from last season, it'd be tough to argue that they were arguably the best division in all of football last year. They had 3 teams make the playoffs. So heading into 2018, as of right now, which team do you think poses the biggest threat to the Saints to claim that title back?
I think it's got to be the Atlanta Falcons. We all kind of agreed that Tampa Bay is not going to probably be competitive again next year. I don't know if I'm 100% buying that the Carolina Panthers are going to just regress drastically. This is a competitive division. A lot of these players have been in this division a long time. Very stable as far as coaching is concerned, and so these teams just all know each other. So I mean, coin flip. What's interesting about this division is the Carolina Panthers are the only team in this division to ever win it back-to-back years, and they just did that in 2014/15. 2014, though, if you'll remember, they made it in as a wild card at like 7-8-1. So I mean, they weren't really that good of a team and won the division that year. So with that said, the cards are stacked against the Saints to not win the division. I think they will. I think you see it line out pretty closely, with the exception of I think Carolina Panthers and Atlanta Falcons kind of switch spots this year, and you see Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Bucks. Would be my prediction.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. That's kind of where I'm at right now too. I think the Saints and the Falcons are going to be battling it out for the title. I think the Panthers are going to take a step back this year, and the Bucks are still rebuilding. So
yeah,
you hit that pretty well. How about you, Zach? Who do you think is the biggest threat to the Saints in that division?
I completely agree with you guys. I think the Falcons have the easiest approach to being able to compete with the Saints compared to the other two teams. Kind of just like what we've gone off of the major regression of the Buccaneers and all the stuff they need to do. The Panthers kind of overachieving, and I'm just really going to be sick of what they're trying to do on offense. So as long as the Falcons, if they can get some value out of Tevin Coleman, like I say, go ahead and do it, because you've got Freeman, and this is incredibly deep running back class. So you could likely fill Coleman's role for cheap and end up getting at least another pick out of it. So I don't see why you wouldn't try and take advantage of that, and there would be suitors for him. So I think it would end up being the Falcons that could compete with the Saints, but you'd figure that this is going to be the Saints division for a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd agree.
It's interesting you say that. I was just shocked at how deep last year's running back class, and you look at this class, and it might actually be just as deep, if not deeper. So, with that, we will move into the AFC South, and we're gonna kind of give Zach the floor here. He has a lot more insight on most of these teams than we do. So we're gonna start at the bottom. The Indianapolis Colts. They obviously took a big step back this year with Andrew Luck not playing. How do you think? I mean, obviously, I'm guessing you're probably going to say they over or underperformed. I'm sorry, but what do you think the Colts need to do this offseason to get back into things here? I mean, especially if Andrew Luck's not going to play, do you think Jacoby Brissett has what it takes to compete in that division?
I think he does. The natural any other team than the Jaguars and the AFC South hater in me tells them to trade away Andrew Luck. I don't care if there's any hope. But me being unbiased, I mean, like, I really don't know how I'd approach that situation. But at the same time, that's just kind of because none of us really know what's going to ever happen with his shoulder again. If they think that there is very little hope for it, I'd field calls just to do it. I don't think that's realistic. And if I'm them, I'm going offensive line and defensive line. Like you said earlier, build the trenches, this time being for the Colts. Mm-hmm. But if I'm Chris Ballard and I'm being ballsy, like this is my gig as a GM here. Maybe I look into finding my own quarterback if I can get just a boatload of value off of Andrew Luck for if we know something is really wrong and we somehow find a way to get a team to bite on it anyway. I'd take 1-4, 1-4-33 from Cleveland if they were dumb enough to want to get take that chance. And suddenly, I mean, you could take Rosen, you can still probably take Chubb, and they can still then continue to build the offensive line. But obviously that's very, very unrealistic, and I know that. So I'm probably going Chubb, maybe Quentin Nelson at 3 if they really value Nelson, because Nelson, I think his floor is like Pro Bowler, let alone ceiling at this point. He looks to be so dynamic at the guard spot. So any way they can build those trenches, I think would be the best for them, especially if Luck is going to be back.
Yeah, you look at, I feel like the Colts have some talent on their team. I mean, Ryan Kelly, he missed most of the year last year. I think he's a Pro Bowl center in my opinion. But obviously most of their stuff comes up front that they need to get better up there. But they have some playmakers on defense. Malik Hooker, he got hurt last year. Jabal Sheard's a good player. Jonathan Hankins is when he wants to be. They got the big guy in the middle, Al Woods. I would say they probably got to get better in the secondary. I mean, the corner positions. So that's a spot they could upgrade this offseason too. Vontae Davis is now gone. And one other spot we didn't talk about is wide receiver. Moncrief probably won't be back next year. He's a free agent. And they currently have nobody across from T.Y. Hilton. So do you see them maybe grabbing somebody in the draft, or do you think they'll attack that in free agency?
It really depends. This receiver market is top heavy. Well, it was top heavy for a second. Then Landry got tagged, and whatever happens with him, I don't know. But he's making too much money, so I wouldn't touch him at this point. I do think Allen Robinson will be back in Jacksonville. I think he really, really likes it here. And there are people in the fan base that are starting to question that, and I don't get it. It's weird. I don't really think he's given any signs to say why he wouldn't like the fan base. But all in all, I don't think he's hitting the market. So suddenly you've got Sammy Watkins and like a massive talent drop-off. So I do think there's going to be a pool in the early second round that they can attack out of the receiver group. So maybe go there. Try and find as much firepower as you can. So maybe you've got a guy that can be the deep threat in T.Y. Hilton, but I feel like a James Washington would bring another dynamic to that offense as well. So sure. They could do I think you try and find like some surefire plug and plays in the interior, in those trenches first. And then after that, you just go firepower.
Right. I agree. Yeah, the Colts have a lot of money to work with. They're third in the league in cap space. They got just about $80 million to work with this offseason, so it'll be interesting to see if they bring any big name guys in.
I'm just
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
put my 2 cents in. The Josh McDaniels fiasco is just super interesting to me, and I'm still in the camp that I believe that he found something out about Andrew Luck, and that's why he pulled out. You know, I think there is because and here's my line of thinking. Chris Ballard comes from New England. They have a good relationship. I don't think he would screw Chris Ballard over just because he was quote unquote promised the keys to New England when Belichick retires. I think there is more. I think there's more to it than that. So I mean, and just in my heart of hearts, believe that something came up with Andrew Luck and that really scared him off and made him realize I'm not doing Denver 2.0 again, and so I'm just going to stay put. So that's my thought as far as Andrew Luck goes.
Yeah, I know we've tossed that around the past few weeks, and I mean it's very valid. I agree with you 100%. I think that definitely could be something that he considered. He knows that he maybe only get one more chance at a head coaching job, and he wants it to count. So the Colts they're not really built to compete right away, I think. So if he knew Andrew Luck wasn't going to be back, he doesn't want to have 2 or 3 seasons where he's only winning like 4 games. So that makes a lot of sense.
Right, definitely.
So yeah, we'll jump into the Texans as the next team here. Man, they had a brutal season with injuries.
They really did.
I don't even know where to start. It doesn't help either that they don't have a first-round pick this year from the Deshaun Watson trade. Or
second. I don't think they have a second-round pick either. They might.
Don't they? I don't know. I haven't checked that deep, but they might not.
Let me see. I can pull that up right now. But yeah, they need to readdress literally every aspect of their depth because, as we could tell, once they started getting hurt, there was no hope really. And that could be, a better backup quarterback than one of the 5 that they went through. They could definitely use the help on the offensive line, depth around the defense. They need help if they want to utilize Deshaun Watson to the best of his abilities, because when he's out there, he's special. And he totally changes the dynamic of that team, but they still need a lot more. And yeah, they don't have any pick until 3rd round, pick number 68, as well as pick number 80.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's rough. The only thing they really do have going for them is they do have some money to work with. They're 6th in the league in cap space. They got $65 million to work with this offseason, so they can bring some players in, but in the draft, they're pretty well screwed.
Thank God for Cleveland.
Yeah, thank God for Cleveland.
They took that dead weight of Brock Osweiler off of them.
Oh my goodness! Let's not talk about that contract.
Yeah.
I actually want to start with the defense with the Texans. I know Chris kind of touched on it a little bit last week. J.J. Watt, when he's on the field and he's healthy, best player in the league, right? Or best defensive player in the league. But how many more – because he's had 2 severe injuries now, 2 season-ending injuries. How many more injuries can he take before he starts to slow down? I mean, they're going to get him back this year, and they're going to get Whitney Merciless back. But after that and Jadeveon Clowney, they don't have a whole lot. I mean, is the defensive interior, the defensive line, something that they maybe need to address free agency or draft?
I think it could be, and that's another thing where there's just no depth, like literally anywhere. Joel Heath, DJ Reader, I'm not sure how much they offer you, and like you said, J.J. Watt being off the field certainly doesn't help. Clowney has started to come into his own. They've got 2 athletic linebackers in Benardrick McKinney and Whitney and Zach Cunningham, and Whitney Merciless. He's not getting any younger either. I think they could really. Well, then I look at their secondary as well, and I mean they struggled so much there at cornerback. They really losing AJ Boye obviously didn't help. They really could go anywhere on defense,
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to try and acquire as many picks as they can and just try and, utilize, even if they're later round picks, just depth guys, because they need to, be able to sustain losing guys throughout the year. But
Right.
I think with Watt, what's unfortunate is that, I don't think he's ever going to be nearly what he was again, considering two major injuries. I mean, it's unfortunate, but for a guy like him at defensive end, those positions don't normally last too long dynamically either. So you might want to start looking for an heir to him as well,
Mm-hmm.
and a guy that he can learn from. But there's a lot to do there.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to upgrade in the secondary too. Jonathan Joseph's a free agent. They might bring him back, but I mean, he's not getting any younger, so they could get a corner and maybe even some safeties. Looking to the offense, it's funny that we got to talk about, I think the Saints are the best offensive line in the league, and I think the Texans might have the worst. It didn't help that they traded away, who's the guy that went to Seattle?
Dwayne Brown.
Dwayne Brown, yeah. It didn't help that they traded him away, but I just looking at them on paper, they don't look very good. They got Davenport and Kendall Lamb, Nick Martin, Jeff Allen, and Derek Newton. Even when Deshaun Watson was playing last year, he was taking a lot of heat, but it was, I mean, he just had so much poise to deliver throws. CJ Fedorowicz, I know he's contemplating retirement. He had 3 concussions last year, so they might have to fill a tight end. I mean, they still have Lamar Miller and DeAndre Hopkins for pieces on offense to score points, but what do they need to do on offense to get better? Obviously offensive line, but any other position?
I think the tight end position would be a smart position to address, as well as obviously the offensive line. Maybe a guy like Ian Thomas, who is raw out of Indiana, wasn't totally utilized, but he can block. He can be a weapon in the pass game. He could be a guy they might want to look at in the 3rd round if he's there, if he doesn't shoot up boards after the combine. Anywhere they can go with the offensive line. It's not that deep of a class. There's a lot of great value picks again on day 2 for interior offensive line, more so than the tackle position. But, try and just completely redo that offensive line and tight end as much as you can. And then you've got the receivers. You can maybe, add more of a possession guy, but you've got your receivers, especially, the obvious DeAndre Hopkins. You've got your running back in Lamar Miller. He's still serviceable, and you've got your future. So try and just do as much as you can to build that offense.
Yeah, I think
something else I
think
wanted to throw out there. Go ahead.
I think if they wanted to really address some of their defensive needs, they could even go for somebody day 3 like Tyrell Crosby out of Oregon. He had a pretty good year.
Sure.
Yeah,
He's a big dude.
Yeah, he's a big dude. He didn't allow a sack last season. He's a solid offensive tackle that I think is kind of going under the radar, that I think will probably slip to the third round. If they wanted to kind of hold off on offensive line and maybe address some of their defensive needs earlier in the draft.
Yeah. One other thing I did want to touch on, I did see on Twitter that DeAndre Hopkins was trying to recruit Jimmy Graham to come to Houston. So I think that could be a pretty interesting addition as well. That would help Deshaun Watson's the experiment. I think that would help him progress quite a bit too. But I think speaking for all of us, I would say that the Texans probably underperformed in 2017. So.
Very much so. It was a pleasure to see as a Jags fan, but nonetheless,
right?
Definitely,
I'm sure it was
achieved.
But they need to get healthy. They had so many injuries last year. So we'll move into the Tennessee Titans, who somehow made the playoffs last year. What did you think about the Mike Mularkey situation? Were you surprised that he got fired? After what happened? They won their playoff game?
I just thought that whole situation was so weird, and like how you knew that something was going to happen, and like it was over dramatic. Like the rumors of him potentially being fired, even with them making the playoffs, and then how the whole Rappaport thing went down over like a day and a half span of him staying to him and the team mutually parting ways. It was all weird. I think Malarkey, what he was doing was outdated and didn't really fit with the guys that they had, specifically Marcus Mariota. I'm a big fan of Marcus Mariota, and I would love to see him do well, but what they had going on there wasn't going to help him whatsoever. They need to open up a lot more of the offense to him. I think that they need to see a lot more growth from their young receivers, and that could be a thing where they might end up letting Eric Decker go and go draft another young receiver. So you've got 2 second-year guys and a rookie right there, but try and get as much speed as you can. I think you have to still keep working on that defense. You know, they're helping what they tried to get from Adoree Jackson, Logan Ryan, Jonathan Cyprien, which I still laugh about. You know, they revamped they revamped their secondary, but that doesn't mean that they did anything good with their secondary. They just they totally redid it, and it didn't really work well. So I think they just need to add more athleticism, more guys back there. I would move Adoree Jackson to nickel corner, honestly. Kevin Byard is very good, though, so at least they have that. They could add a lot in the front seven. They can try and be more versatile with their scheming because they do have a Brian Arakpo as a pass rusher there. Jarrell Casey is a great defensive tackle as well. So there are pieces there for them to continue being good, but they just need to – I think they need to become more quick in a lot of vital areas.
Right. How about you, Chris? Is there anything specific that you think the Titans need to do this offseason to get better?
Man, they already did it by getting rid of Mike Malarkey.
Yeah, do you like the Mike Vrabel hire?
I really like it.
Both of you. Yeah, both of you. I want to hear what you guys got to say about Vrabel.
I'm
just curious to see what's going to happen with him there. I felt like that wasn't one of my favorite fits for him. I actually liked him as a potential guy for Detroit, but I do think that he is going to be a good head coach. Don't get me wrong. I've been excited for him coming up the ranks for a while. So if he is good in Tennessee, I'm going to be mad though, very naturally, but at the same time, good for him.
Yeah, I like the hire. I think Tennessee really messed up coming out and giving that vote of confidence to Malarkey. And I've said this. I've said this on previous podcasts that I think it was without a doubt Josh McDaniels would have gone there. I think that was the best landing spot for him. I think that's really where he probably wanted to go. But they came out with the vote of confidence. Then he took the Indianapolis deal. Then it kind of all went a little haywire. I think Vrabel is a good pick. I was a little surprised they didn't go offensive mind, especially with Mariota just not really living up to his potential right now. But I think he's going to be a really good head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm surprised that they didn't go a guy that's really heavy offensive minded, somebody that can help Marcus Mariota progress. Because I think he did take a step back this year. I was pretty disappointed because I drafted him as my quarterback for my fantasy team, thinking he was going to put up 30 touchdowns this year, and he didn't do that. Mm-hmm. So, a couple other things I think they need to address. The guard position, I could see them drafting interior early in the draft, maybe. I guess what I have slated right now for them in the draft is Harold Landry, the defensive end out of Boston College. I feel like he'd be a good stand-up linebacker for him in their 3-4 defense.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know. I heard Brian Arakpo is maybe a guy that might get cut, and even if they do keep him, I think they need to get younger. Kevin Dodd hasn't done anything yet, and I've also heard that Jonathan Cyprien and Denoris Searcy are probably both going to get cut. So they could also go the strong safety position. So
definitely. There were a lot of Titans fans in my mentions this past offseason who were telling me that we just didn't know how to use Jonathan Cyprien and they'll be more strict, find a role for him. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait for my opportunity to go back and retweet all of those the second he's cut.
You're going to get it, man.
I'm
going
talking about
Cyprien?
Field day. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
He's
Cyprien.
got I think, what was I reading the other day? He's got a 9.4 cap hit this year. I feel like that's so much money for him. It's just not worth it.
Yeah,
he's one of the bottom safeties in the league.
I'm pretty sure he was given a relatively close deal to what Barry Church got, and Titans fans were saying that we downgraded.
Oh man. I disagree 100%.
It was incredible. I'm very much looking forward to this.
Oh, it actually could happen this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think both those guys are going to be cut. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really all I got to say about the Titans. Is there anything else you guys want to add?
I mean,
I normally don't like talking about the Titans, so
is that of the three other teams in the AFC South? Is that the team you hate the most?
Oh, easily.
Because I know Chris hates the Falcons and I hate the Packers, so we all got the team that we despise.
For the most part, I cannot stand their fan base. There's just a lot of real cancerous guys in that fan base, and it probably overshadows the good guys, kind of like every fan base. But I kind of view them like a lot of people view the Eagles.
Okay.
But I will never be able to let down the 1999 year where they were the only team to beat us, and they did it 3 times, including in the AFC Championship game. So they forever have my hatred.
That's all right. We all got that one team that we despise.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're gonna move into your team here now, the Jaguars. I'd like to start off just asking you how you feel about the Blake Bortles situation. I know Chris has probably got something to say about it too. So,
go ahead.
I'd love to hear what you got to say.
I actually really like the contract extension, and as of late, I was one of the guys saying they should try and trade up for Josh Rosen with how this team is built, or Baker Mayfield. So it's weird for me to come out and say that I like any form of extension for Blake Bortles, but this immediately lowers his cap hit by about half. They can pay guys. I think they're going to draft a quarterback before day 2 is over. And this would essentially be their bridge quarterback, like a true safety net in a way. Because Mike Glennon was never going to be a safety net in Chicago because he was so unproven. Whereas I think the Jaguars have found the best way to utilize a guy like Blake Bortles and technically hiding him. Yeah. So I think that because, I mean, they have the opportunity to be able to get out of Blake's deal potentially after every season without too much damage to their cap space. So they could draft a guy before day 2 is over, and then if they like his development by next year, if Blake Bortles isn't cutting it, you could say, well, we got this guy right here in house who we've grown and we've gotten to work with, and give him the, have Blake Bortles be the Alex Smith this year in a way. So I like it because they can pay Allen Robinson, they can do what they need to do and be fine, and they have options at quarterback now.
I have gotten
Chris,
so much hate from a lot of people in the Twitterverse because I'm one of the people that believe that without a doubt, not a question in my mind, Blake Bortles is the absolute worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now. And there are even backups that I would take before I would take Blake Bortles as my starter. And
I disagree with the first, and I agree with the second. If that makes sense.
I'm with you.
I would take Deshaun Kaiser over Blake Bortles.
No, that's too far.
I would take Tom Savage over Blake Bortles.
Chris, we're going to kick you off here if you keep throwing out those names.
He's so
Tom
bad.
Savage is garbage.
Oh, and I so badly want them to just take Kirk Cousins or Case Keenum and win a freaking Super Bowl next year. Like, they have the team. They are literally a competent quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, we discuss that almost every single week. I know we were talking about how the Jaguars are going to be the representative in the AFC if they had a quarterback. I know when the news first came out, I tweeted right away. I was like, what are the Jaguars doing? Because I mean, I don't think Blake Bortles is the worst quarterback in the league, but he's definitely like a lower tier 3, I think, or a higher tier 3. And I mean, if they added somebody in free agency, like a serviceable quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over, I mean, they're the best team in the AFC. I mean, they could beat Brady, I think.
I think they're literally like a Tyrod Taylor away,
right.
Let alone something better too. So I definitely get that side of it.
But when I looked at it, I had a few people tweet me and they're like, "No, it's really not that bad a deal." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess they extended him, moved the money out a little bit, and they can bridge like a bridge gap, to somebody like Lamar Jackson maybe from Louisville. That could maybe be somebody that they draft. I know that's who I have slated to him right now. But the only thing I really didn't like about it, and I do want to ask you about it, do you think they're completely out of like the QB market now in free agency?
I
do you think they'll bring anybody in?
I do think so in free agency. I think their plan is going to be a draft someone no matter what. Even if it is just to be strictly a backup, because Chad Henne is a free agent. So they have to no matter what. I do think it's earlier than later to have a guy they develop as a potential starter in the long term. But not as much considering they are going to be paying Bortles, even though it is a little less of a cap hit now since they do have his solid contract on the books now. I don't think they'll be paying any other quarterbacks.
Okay. Yeah, I was pretty curious about that. I wanted to hear what you had to say. That was kind of like my main question for you tonight. I didn't know if they were maybe going to bring like a lower end free agent maybe to come in and just compete with Bortles, but it'd be kind of crazy to because what is his cap hit next year? It's still around $19 million, ain't it?
And this year it's gone down to 10. But
it is 10. Okay.
The year after I think is 16.5.
Okay. That's even then it's really not too bad, I guess. It depends if he's starting or not. But they have the option of cutting him next year and not losing any money.
They need to cut him this year.
What's that? What did you say you're going to cut this year? I'd love to see them draft Lamar Jackson, to be honest with you. I think he'd be so super fun to watch in that offense with him and Leonard Fournette. Maybe run some like zone read stuff. But what other positions on the team could we maybe see the Jags address in free agency other than I know maybe like a lower end quarterback?
I think you need to keep your eyes on Justin Pugh. I'm not saying I'd 100% throw all the money at him because he definitely has injury concerns, but he is a Doug Marrone, a Nate Hackett, and a Tom Coughlin disciple. Played for Syracuse in college under Marrone and Hackett, and then obviously Coughlin in New York. So the connections are very much there for him to be here, and he's a versatile guy you can throw at left guard, at right guard, and even right tackle. And if it's not free agency, I think they address the interior offensive line like quarterback before day 2 is over. I really, really like the idea of a Will Hernandez at 29.
All right, that's my guy. You stay away from him.
Yeah. Sorry, man. I need someone that's 6'3", 340 and athletic as hell with a neck roll.
Oh, dude, he looks the part. If you guys don't know who Will Hernandez is, just Google a picture of him. He looks like a bowling ball. He looks like your prototypical guard in the NFL.
He really, really does.
And he's mean.
He fits this power scheme really well at left guard as just a mauler, as a run blocker. Little bit of work to do with his pass protection, but the ability to pass protect is there. I really, really like his fit. And then I think they'll also try and find a playmaking tight end as well. Not so much the Mercedes Lewis blocking kind of tight end, but I mentioned Mike Gesicki earlier. He could be a guy that could go after Mark Andrews, Goddard. They could also look at Hayden Hurst. I think they'll really keep their eyes open with the tight end market.
Yeah, all those guys are pretty valid. What about Paul Posluszny? Do you think they move on from him at middle linebacker? Go younger?
I think so. I've been on the belief that Posluszny has been vastly overrated by the fan base for about a year and a half, 2 years. His speed with his age has very naturally declined. And it's not like you can it's not that he sucks as a player, but that not having that has hurt his game an incredible amount. He's just not who he used to be. I think they let him go because there will be teams that will still go after a guy that can be a run plugging linebacker in his role. And I think they'll draft a mid-round guy, just kind of a speedy guy, like a Miles Jack clone in a way, but maybe a lesser value guy. Tigre Scales kind of makes sense, and he could even play the outside linebacker as well out of Indiana. they're going to have some options there. They might try and incorporate their Sam linebacker a little more than they did this year, where they ran about 67% nickel. I've seen them looking at prospects like Nwosu from USC, Fred Warner from BYU, and those are guys that would fit their kind of under Sam hybrid pass rusher, run plugging linebacker kind of role.
Right. How about you, Chris? Is there anything you'd like to see the Jags do this offseason other than quarterback? Don't rant about Bortles anymore.
No. I mean, I think their two biggest needs is going to be offensive lineman and tight end. And so,
yeah.
I mean, as an avid LSU fan, I would really love to see Fournette just build on this phenomenal rookie season, and he'll be able to do that if they can get him some good offensive line help. So I know y'all mentioned Hernandez, but I really like Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame for the Jaguars.
He's a beast
as a guard. So. I mean, I think you have more upside with Hernandez possibly, but I think Nelson's going to give you a very consistent, and I feel like you kind of know what you're going to get out of him, type of prospect. So, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's I mean, the Jaguars, man, they've put themselves in a. I think that's top 5 best defense we've ever seen. It's the best defense I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Oh, mine as well.
Yeah,
easily.
So,
they're fast. They're fun to watch.
Yeah,
they really are.
I mean, I can't even.
They just need to take advantage of the window that they have with this defense, which, if they play their cards right, they can keep the window open for a while, but you have to treat it like it's a 2-year window and it runs through Calais Campbell, because he changed so much for this pass rush and for this defense as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's definitely not getting any younger. So.
Yeah, he's what is he, early 30s?
I think 31. Maybe just
31.
30 now.
Okay. All right. Zach, I'm going to give you 4 players here, and I just want you to give me a simple yes or no on whether or not they'll be back at the Jags next year.
Gotcha.
Allen Robinson.
Yes.
You think he will be back? They're gonna tag him?
I think they're going to go into negotiations for a deal and try and front load it. I mean, if he's getting the majority of his guarantees right now, I don't see how he could say no to it when he's fresh off an ACL tear. But if they can't agree on something, I do think they will tag him.
Okay. The guy across from him, Alan Hearns, are they going to cut him?
I think Hearns is back. I think they're going to try and restructure his deal. I don't think he'd have an issue with doing it, because they do very much have the possibility of saying, okay, well then you're gone. And I don't know how many teams would even pay him as much as they'd restructure him for, considering very much active injury history. But when he is playing, he plays a great possession role. So I think he's back. I think it's on a restructured deal where they can still give him a decent amount of money. But right now, I think he's slated to have a $7 million cap hit this year. They could even get that down to 5, and I'd be happy.
Right. Third guy, another wide receiver, Marquise Lee. He's a free agent. Is his team going to bring him back? I actually thought that he was probably your guys' best wideout last year.
I think he's gone. I had my ups and downs with him. He's got drop issues that he came across on. He got better at. Mm-hmm. He's really good at working the intermediate zones. If you're hitting him on underneath routes, on curl routes or crossing routes, he's your guy. The thing is, with the growth of Keelan Cole and Dede Westbrook, as well as if they're keeping Allen Robinson, then
it's tough to do. Yeah,
he's automatically your wide receiver 4 next year. And I think Lee's going to view himself as a guy in the wide receiver 2 type of market, where he could get at least like $6 to $7 million, maybe more a year, maybe a Pierre Garçon type of contract that San Francisco gave him last year. Mm-hmm. So I do think he'll just end up wanting to test his market. And if it's not that big, then maybe he could end up in Jacksonville. But I think he's going to be hitting the market and take some money somewhere.
Right. I think the Carolina Panthers is a name that could come up for Marquise Lee. I think he'd be a good slot receiver in their offense.
I've seen that. I've actually seen New Orleans as a potential number
really?
2 to Michael Thomas.
What do you think about that, Chris?
Marquez Lee, I'd love it.
Yeah,
I'd love it. There's
be fun with Breeze.
I feel like that'd actually be a really good combo of him and Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, because you got to think Ted Ginn is 33, and he's not going to play forever.
Right.
So they definitely could use another playmaker.
Right.
And then the last guy I had for you, Zach, was I know I've seen his name pop up a few times as a potential cut option to save some money. The right tackle, Jeremy Parnell.
I think he's here. He really solidified his role this year after an up and down injury-ridden 2017. Now, if you're asking me for long term, I don't think he'll be here past this year. But right now, they it's kind of a if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of thing. Unless they're really really trying to make a push on like 2 or 3 free agents, then he might be able to. And then you draft like a Connor Williams at 29 or something like that. But as of now, I think he'll end up being here.
Right. I thought he took a big step forward this year. I thought he looked better. So, we'll close up the AFC South with which team do you think is going to pose the biggest threat to the Jags for the AFC South title in 2018?
I think it's going to be Houston if they play their cards right, just because of how dynamic and how different they are when Watson is playing. But they do have a lot of work to do to solidify that number 2 in the AFC South role.
Think the Titans maybe take a step back with Vrabel as the new head coach?
They might have a first year kind of fall off and then bounce back after it, because I think there will be some growing pains.
Right. Yeah, I agree. How about you, Chris? What do you think? Who's going to contend the Jags?
I think really the only I don't know. I'd like to say the Houston Texans, but I just don't know if they can stay healthy, and if they're going to be able to keep have enough depth to maintain injuries. So probably the Titans.
Right. Yeah, I guess if I had to pick one, I'd probably say the Titans too. I definitely could see some growing pains. I am pretty scared for Marcus Mariota. I don't know what he's gonna. I feel like he doesn't really have much of a guide right now. So I don't know what their offense is gonna look like. But I think they got some good young pieces put together. I'd like to see a full season of Derrick Henry, and maybe get rid of DeMarco Murray. So I think if there is going to be one team that contends the Jags, it'll probably be the Titans. But we'll see what happens. That pretty much wraps up this week's State of the NFL with the AFC and the NFC South. I got some weekly news and notes to hit on before we close up here. Is there anything you want to add in, Chris?
No, but I would like to. I'd like to start on the news.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Zach's grandpa, Commissioner Roger.
No.
Is he crazy? Is he stupid? What?
You're talking about the catch rule or what?
Well, I don't. There's no clarity.
Everything. Just literally just assume everything he does is dumb.
But
in general.
But what is this $2 million fine?
Oh, for Jerry.
I'm sorry, not a fine. It's a reimbursement of cost. Because Ezekiel Elliott wanted to appeal his suspension because he felt like he was innocent, and Jerry Jones didn't want to back up a Brinks truck to Roger Goodell's house and pay him a shit ton of money that he didn't feel like he deserved. So because he, protecting the interest of his team, decided that he wanted to fight against the contract extension, and that his running back felt like he was innocent, so he wanted to appeal his 6-game suspension. Because those two things happen, now Jerry Jones has to reimburse legal costs to the league for a sum of $2 million. I think it's the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life.
I know I mentioned this on Twitter before he hopped on here. I'm really excited to see how bad he's going to get booed this year at the draft in Dallas. It's going to be funny.
Oh, and then to add icing to the cake, if Jerry Jones refuses to pay this $2 million ransom and he appeals it, he's got to appeal it to Roger Goodell.
Unreal.
That's just great television.
Yeah, like they really should make a TV show and air this. I'd pay for the pay-per-view ticket for sure.
I would too.
That's funny.
So, anyways, that's my rant. We hate Roger Goodell here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, just clarifying, there's absolutely no relation here. Thank the Lord.
You got anything else, Chris?
I mean, we can talk about this update of the catch rule. I don't think it's going to fix anything if you want to. But
Yeah, it's a shitty day to be a Cowboys fan.
yeah,
Des caught it.
They finally
Des
came out and
caught
said Des caught it
But
2
it's-
years later.
But it's too late. So
but no,
yeah, go ahead.
I think the franchise tag on Ziggy was interesting.
Yeah, it is. I actually didn't see that coming. He's got a 17.5 price tag on him. I'm sure they'll renegotiate a contract, but that's a hefty price you're going to be paying for his services next year.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, he's decent, but he's not $17.5 million a year.
Oh,
Good.
not even close. Not even close. Anything else?
No, I think that's really all I got.
All right, I'm going to do my weekly list here. I don't have a whole lot, but the Broncos are expected to shop quarterback Trevor Siemian. I've seen the Atlanta Falcons and Miami Dolphins pop up a few times with his name surrounding it. I know you're a big Trevor Siemian fan.
Mm-hmm. No,
For whatever reason.
He let me down. Jacksonville should probably look at him. He'd be better than Blake Bortles.
Oh, my goodness. Kirk Herbstreit is expected to replace John Gruden on ESPN's draft day coverage this year. Thought that was pretty interesting.
That is a great thing.
Oh yeah, you don't like Gruden, do you? I forgot about that.
He just
You don't like Gruden, do you?
I don't hate him. I mean, I think Monday Night Football is not going to be the same without him. But dude, he just gets on my last nerve. Like,
Yeah.
Dude is so
Spider 2, why banana?
Yeah, he's super annoying.
DeMarcus Lawrence is rumored to be asking for $17 million per year in his new contract. You think he'll get it?
No.
How about you, Zach?
Maybe.
Think he'll get that?
Maybe? I don't know.
I about crapped my pants when I saw that.
What's the going rate for defensive ends right now? I mean,
I can't imagine it's anything more than like 12.
Yeah. So,
I guess if Ziggy is gonna get that big money, then maybe he has a little bit of just a little bit of leverage in it. But at the same time, I don't think Jerry Jones is one to give in too much to demands. So
yeah, I'm gonna be really frustrated if the Detroit Lions kind of like change the going rate for defensive ends if they end up agreeing to a long-term deal and pay Ziggy an unbelievable amount of money. Like that's
right.
It's just, I mean, you're not doing anybody justice by paying these players that much money, because at the end of the day, no teams are going to be able to keep up with that. And then you're just going to have a watered-down product because nobody can have a good team. And so I'm kind of getting frustrated with some of these mega deals coming out that people don't really deserve.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. After coming out and saying he'll retire after the 2017 season, Martellus Bennett says he wants to continue playing.
Okay.
Just very much Martellus Bennett like.
Yeah.
Maybe they have room for him in the XFL.
Go ahead. Oh yeah, maybe. The Jaguars released running back Chris Ivory. I know we hit on that already. The Chiefs traded quarterback Marcus Peters to the LA Rams for a 2018 fourth-round pick and a 2019 second-round pick. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you would think that you would get a lot more for him, right?
Yeah, they got robbed.
Yeah, the Peters thing is really interesting to me because, one, he's still on a rookie deal. Two, he leads the league in interceptions since he's come into the league. There's got to be something there that Andy Reid's like, I can't deal with
that trade screamed. That trade screamed from Kansas City's point of view. We don't want to deal with it. We'll take whatever you want to give us.
Exactly.
That's basically what I got out of that.
Especially because it's Andy Reid. Like, if anyone can handle a guy like Marcus Peters, you'd think it's Andy Reid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
And if he can't, then like I don't know who is.
So it was reported that he apparently asked for a trade as soon as they lost to that Titans game in the playoffs. So
And I know he was very
he doesn't really
vocal.
seem like a team guy to me.
He was very vocal about Alex Smith getting traded.
Yeah.
Which to me, like, you can't you if you're Alex Smith or a Chiefs fan, you saw the writing on the wall when they traded up to get Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Mahomes just balled out that last game, you're like, okay, yeah, this guy's for real. Yeah, he's ready. I mean, we all knew it was going to happen. So,
the Jaguars extended head coach Doug Marrone, the general manager Dave Caldwell, and Tom Coughlin.
That's a
contracts.
Genius move.
I thought it was a great move. I also think that's another way that they can get flexibility at quarterback, because that's now 4 years to draft another, and it's kind of like a green light for Dave Caldwell, because there was so much questioning on what's going to happen since he missed on his. Like, Blake Bortles is definitely not what you'd expect out of a third-round pick. So I think him having another full 4 years on here like immediately opens up the idea for them to still go high on a quarterback, because this is kind of a second shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. The future looks good.
I like it. I think Doug Marrone is a very underrated head coach. I think he is an excellent head coach. I know a lot of people kind of gave him a lot of shit when he left the Buffalo Bills, but I mean, really, they were the Buffalo Bills at the time.
Yeah, like, what are you gonna do? Like, if you're given the opportunity to leave what seems like a shithole franchise, like, I take advantage of that like all day.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what I think he did.
Yeah, and so I like it. Doug Marrone kind of comes from the Sean Payton coaching tree. He was our offensive coordinator in 2006. If you look at why am I drawing a blank on his name?
I don't know who you're talking about.
John's ex-head coach. Why am I drawing a blank on his name?
McAdoo?
What? No, not McAdoo. That's in
Did you say Giants ex-head coach?
Yeah, Coughlin. God,
Coughlin,
Jesus,
yeah.
there it is.
I was like, who are you talking about?
Oh, God. I need to sleep. I haven't gotten much sleep the last couple nights. Coughlin. I think Coughlin has really reaffirmed his standing in the league. I know a lot of people are down on him because of the way his New York tenure ended, and so for him to go back to Jacksonville and kind of be the guru behind everything and just kind of right the ship in Jacksonville, I think does a lot for his legacy.
Definitely.
So
I agree.
Patriots linebacker David Harris is retiring. He finished his career with 1,109 tackles, 36.5 sacks, and 6 interceptions. Yeah. The Patriots also re-signed running back and special teams ace Brandon Bolden. Larry Holder of the New Orleans Times has reported that Kenny Vaccaro is likely to leave the Saints in free agency. I know we kind of touched on that a little bit already.
Look out for Dallas. Look out for Dallas. I bet that's where he lands.
I have seen that name pop up. Yeah. Mike Jerky of Arizona Sports says that the Arizona Cardinals are not expected to pursue Kirk Cousins in free agency. Thought that was kind of surprising. Bears running back Jordan Howard guarantees the Bears will make the playoffs in 2018.
Yeah, I saw that.
You guys see Demarius Randall tweeted him with a bunch of emojis. I thought that was pretty funny.
If we backtrack just a second on the Kirk Cousins deal, I don't know if you have had a chance to listen to the new little morning bite that I put up every morning on the All Pro Nation Radio Network.
I haven't yet.
But this morning's episode was really focused on Kirk Cousins and the sales pitch that the Vikings could offer.
And you got a good one.
Yeah, and so why I think that I really think now, looking at it, how things have kind of shaped up, I think Kirk Cousins could possibly be a Viking next year.
I think so too. I think that's actually a really strong option.
Yeah, I mean, because you look, I mean, the Jets and the Broncos can offer him a buttload of cash. The Vikings, they have a little bit of cap space. They can't. They're
We got
gonna.
a ton of cap space.
Yeah, but they're gonna be more in the they're gonna be in more of the market of paying what the going rate. 26,
Oh no, yeah,
26, maybe
That's kinda-
27 million. Where the Broncos and the Jets could back the Brinks truck up and give him 30 or more million a year. But where the Vikings differ is they've got a defense, they've got weapons. I mean, he could easily go there and be
Win
a
a Super
contender and win a Super
Mhm.
Bowl. So that's a very interesting place for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's attractive for sure. I'm excited to see what happens because I'm so sick of this damn QB controversy. If you guys are Vikings fans, you don't understand. It's terrible. Ian Rappaport has reported the Vikings are not expected to franchise tag Case Keenum, so I'm glad that's done with. Vikings quarterback Teddy Bridgewater's contract will not toll. He will officially be a free agent on March 14th. Glad that's taken care of. Panthers released safety Kurt Coleman and defensive end Charles Johnson. I know we talked about they wanted to go younger. The Bears have cut linebacker Pernell McPhee and safety Quentin Demps. The Redskins are reportedly fielding trade offers for safety Suak Ravens. The Bills signed cornerback Vontae Davis to a one-year deal worth $5 million. Eagles punter Donnie Jones retired today after 14 seasons. And my last bit is the Saints have released linebacker Gerald Hodges and claimed tackle John Theus off the Panthers roster. And that's all I got for news.
Yeah. One other thing that I think is interesting is the Panthers are actually going to waste a franchise tag on Graham Gano.
They did that last year too, didn't they?
Yeah. So
They franchise tagged him last year, I think.
So if you want to know where the Panthers spend dumb money, it is franchise tagging a
Average
freaking
kickers.
kicker.
Yeah, they're good at doing dumb things.
They're franchise tagging a kicker. I don't.
Yeah,
God,
unreal.
that's up.
Yeah, I know.
That's up there with the Raiders giving Gruden $100 million.
That's up there with drafting a punter in the third round.
Or Tampa Bay trading up to get a punter. And
That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
God.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
that's dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next couple of weeks are about to get interesting. So we're 15 days away from the start of free agency. So that, about 11 days from the legal tampering period. So
And the NFL Combine is this week too.
yeah, so they've got a lot of it's about to pick up a little bit for the NFL fans. All right, so does anybody have anything else they want to add?
Thanks for coming on, Zach. I
just-
appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, Zach, go ahead and remind everybody where they can find you at on the internet.
Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Zach_Goodall. You can find all of my work at Locked On Jaguars. We've got the podcast, we got the website, we got all the Jaguars content you need.
Yeah. So y'all go check Zach out. Don't forget, if you haven't yet, the Sports Greeks podcast is up and loaded on the All Pro Nation Radio Network. We have the new Morning Bite show going on, and hopefully within the next week or so, we're going to have another new podcast launching on the network. So y'all be sure to go like and subscribe to that. Be sure to follow Zach. Check on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Next week, we'll end our State of the NFL series where we will talk the NFC and the AFC West. That should be interesting. A lot of good stuff to talk about there. So we'll do that, and then we'll be gearing up for free agency. So you guys have a good night. You can find me on Twitter as always at 318Chris Smith, and you can find Tanner at purple_post. And be sure to check everything out going on at allpronation.com. And y'all have a great evening. Peace out.